Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 2, What are Ethics and Morality? I'm not going to simply reiterate what is in your Revealing Ethics text. So I'm going to give my own sling on it, add some things that I think are important. And you may use this for the questions and the discussions, or it will show up on the quiz, okay? So what exactly is the difference between ethics and morality? The short answer is it depends on who you ask. Maybe the not so short answer is that morality tends to be more grounded in something dogmatic. In ethics, you will find something more prescriptive that can be applied to all of us that live in this pluralistic society. It should come as no surprise to any of you that we all typically believe and understand things a little differently. All right? But morality is more encompassing. I'm going to try to read from my notes because if I don't, I'll go off on a tangent. So morality incorporates the pursuit of wellness and happiness, eudaimonia. I'll talk about that again shortly. Let me spell that for you. Eudaimonia, right? Virtue theory, natural law theory, along with issues of what we call conscience and casuistry. Casuistry is like, how do we apply something in a specific area? Now, ethics doesn't always encompass all those things. So, in other words, we wouldn't talk about a business morality, environmental morality. We talk more in terms of the principles that guide us. So we would talk about business ethics, medical ethics, environmental ethics, and such. All right. So to say, though, that ethics is simply limited to those is a little misleading. But the reason why we'll probably have some issues as we go along, and by issues I mean we'll have some dialogue about it, is that so often today in business and or in politics particularly, we equate what is right or wrong with what is legal or illegal. So if it's wrong, it's illegal, and if it's right, then it's legal. So we might say to somebody, well, then are they corrupt? Well, they didn't break the law. We start to put ourselves into situations where we are allowing our particular legal system, wherever that may be we live, for us here in the United States, to dictate the ethical outlines of how we live our lives. That's tragic. All right. So let's just say that overall, morality is formative. It helps form us as individuals and human beings, and ethics is more governance. But these are not mutually exclusive. Sometimes they will overlap. Okay, so here in philosophy, you see definitions on revealing ethics textbooks. We're really tackling the big questions here. Why do we exist? Is there a purpose to life? Is there God or gods? All right. So metaphysics asks what a thing is. For example, it'll ask what is its being. Now this is just one aspect of it. We would call this ontology, the study of being. Now that may not sound interesting to you, and you might be thinking, how am I going to use this in my life? Or how is it applicable? All right. Well, everything about ethics and morality is grounded in being. For example, if I were to ask you, is it ethical or moral for me to kill this being in the other room? You could not even give me an answer or venture to give me an answer until you asked me, what being is it? So you're already starting out. What is it? Well, if I told you, well, it was a wasp or a fly, it's likely you'd have no problem. Okay, you can kill it. If I told you, well, it's a small animal, you might want a little more information because that's not very specific as to what is this being. If I continued and said, well, it's a mouse. Well, some of you might prefer catch and release, right? As long as it's not, damaging the electrical system in the house. That happened to me, right? They can get in the walls. Or how about a squirrel? A squirrel, they're a little more cute. The aesthetics of it appeals to us, but they too can be destructive. So typically we would not want to hurt them unless we had no other way to keep our house safe. I had to do that in my house. They were chewing through the electrical wires. We were all sitting down having our spaghetti on Sunday, and the lights are flicking off and on, and squirrels don't just come, so I had to have somebody come in and remove those. But what if I were to say, it's a rat? Maybe that type of being, depending on who you are, you'd say, well, I have no problem. You get the idea, right? If I started to say, well, what about it's a cat or a dog or a human person, a baby? All of a sudden now we really cannot make a decision or a judgment until we determine what this thing is that we're talking about, right? So anyway, being matters. Now, epistemology, that is simply how we know things, and I'm not going to go through all the variations of this particular branch of philosophy that there is. Generally speaking, it's popular to talk about the empiricists. These are people who say that, it's our sense experience, things that we can weigh and measure. So we would ask, like, how do I know something? That's epistemology. How do I know it? I mean, again, this is applicable no matter where you go. Now, if you're going to be a nurse, there are certain things that, yes, you need to empirically prove those, right? You guys kind of mentioned those. I heard some people mention various things that you do, taking blood and such, and looking for pathogens and, the vital signs. These things are important. But there are also many things about our being that we cannot weigh or measure or look at empirically like that. Sometimes reason, just the fact that let's just reason it out. We don't really need experience. Well, that would be rationalist, all right? But anyway, we're going to weave in and out of these throughout the course. But anyway, we could also discuss what's the role of feelings. I mean, we are human beings. We're not just little robots. So customs, traditions, there's all kinds of ways. Intuition, we'll talk about those. Okay, so when it comes to making ethical decisions, we'll look at a variety of approaches. But, the notion of goodness is important. Now, let's go back to that. The Greeks called this eudaimonia, and it's usually translated as happiness. And this was thought to be the goal in life. Now, oftentimes the word blessedness is used, and not really in a religious sense. It's just that happiness, and this is important, I think, for you to know. Happiness has come to us now to mean nothing more than we'd call subjective contentment, like what makes you or I content as subjects. And that varies from person to person, and it's really just about like what makes us, feel good. Eudaimonia is more about human flourishing, and it's something that would be universal, like, something that, all peoples would aspire to, all right? As opposed to values. Values are something that are a little more subjective, and you or I may value one thing higher than another. We may value the life of the squirrel more than even the damage it's doing to the house. Other people are going to value the house and what damage could be more so than the squirrel. Anyway, so we'll look at those. One last thing before I cut out here is let's talk about judgments, right? So being judgmental is not cool. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes to be a judgmental person. They're always making declarations about our attitudes and our behaviors and our actions and such, right? But making judgments is absolutely necessary, and we do it all the time. So we're not judging the person, but we could be judging, the actions, the attitudes, and the behaviors. And as a matter of fact, if a person says, "I never judge," and I think people who are judge are evil, well, you've just made rather pronounced judgment, right? So we judge all the time, and we need to. Racism is bad. That's a judgment that we can accept. Freedom overall is good. It's all limited, right? Freedom is anyway. Those are what the text would call the normative judgments. Okay, so they tell us what we should do. So if I say Jose likes to dance, that's simply a non-normative judgment. It's just describing something, okay? If I say Jose makes a lot of money as a stockbroker, that too is a non-normative judgment. But if I go a little bit farther and I say, but you know what, it's wrong that Jose spends so much time at work and not enough time with his family. Now I am into a normative judgment. This falls within ethics. I'm saying about what something he ought to do. And we could have discussions over the value of, how much is enough, and do we value family time more than work time? Now, we're keeping this simple, right? Oftentimes in ethical decisions, we do what's called simple scenarios, where we don't add like all the little details and circumstances because they change everything. Well, what if, Jose had a sick wife and he needed money? Okay, well, then it's important that he's working more than being home, as long as somebody physically taking care of the person. But what if he's just doing it for, a bigger speedboat or something like that? So, we're going to stay away from trying to come up with 1,000 scenarios and just say, generally speaking, this would be true, right? So we'll ask ourselves in the end, do we value human flourishing more than being rich? So if you think it's up to each person to decide whether or not it's better for them to have money or better for them to spend time with your family, well, then you would be a moral or ethical relativist. You say, well, it's up to you. On the other hand, if you think there are some absolutes, family trumps anytime you would spend extra at work, above and beyond, well, then you're talking something more in terms of absolutism. And again, we'll go through all of this. I just wanted to give you a little bit of something else that I think hopefully augments what is on revealing ethics. All right, guys, take care.